Many of you should, as do I, recognize this story and these two performers from, well, at least I can say I was still growing up when they were on. George and Gracie? Rings a bell. George and Gracie is, and this is the original, this is a takeoff on George Burns and Gracie Allen. And this was written by our playwright Ted Schvimer. And even though he's not here today, he's here with us, of course, in spirit, as we always say. So, are we ready to do George and Gracie? The announcer brings, now imagine, if you will, this is a radio studio. Okay, it's not a television studio. Imagine, if you will, two of those big old-fashioned microphones in front of the actors. Here you go, George and Gracie.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the radio audience. Tetley T, the Brisk T, welcomes you to the George Burns and Gracie Allen Radio Hour. Remember, for the pick-me-up that never lets you down, it's Tetley T, the Brisk T. And now, here's your host for tonight's radio hour, George Burns and Gracie Allen.
Thank you very much. And my Gracie, don't you look lovely today? What's the occasion?
Oh, thank you, George. It's for Mama's wedding.
Your Mama's wedding?
Oh, George, you are so forgetful. I told you, Mama met this nice man, and they're going to be married next week, and I want you to be nice to him.
Okay, I'll be nice to him. I bet he has money.
Mama said she never counted his money.
I bet he's good looking.
No, Mama says he's just average looking.
I bet he's good in bed.
Oh, now, George, stop that. Mama says all they've ever done is hold hands.
So why does she want to marry him?
He can see to drive at night.
Well, I can see that they will probably have a long and happy life together. After all, people have gotten married and stayed together for a long time for far less reasons. Right, Gracie? Gracie? Gracie, what's the matter now?
You forgot again, George.
Forgot? What did I forget?
Our anniversary.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Gracie. I've been so busy at the office that it just slipped right past me. Come over to the window. I want to show you something. You see that 60-foot yacht in the harbor? I'll buy you that for an anniversary present, and we'll rename it the Gracie. How about that?
I don't want your yacht.
You don't want the yacht? Well, look down in the driveway. You see that Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible? I'll buy you that for an anniversary present.
I don't want your convertible.
You don't want the yacht, and you don't want the convertible. Remember that 18-karat clear white diamond necklace you saw in the display window at Tiffany's? I'll buy you that as an anniversary present.
George, you can take your necklace and shove it.
You don't want any of those expensive gifts? What do you want?
I want a divorce.
You want a divorce? I wasn't thinking of anything quite that expensive.
George, you are so dumb. It's not the size of the gift that is important. It's that you remember the most important day in our lives. I would have been just as happy with a card and going to have dinner with you at a nice restaurant. Oh, and speaking of restaurants, I saw your partner, Max, having lunch with a lovely lady, and she wasn't his wife. Oh, they were holding hands. They were so lovey-dovey. When he leaned over and kissed her, I just had to get up and leave.
Oh, well, you saw Max and Sally. She's his mistress.
His mistress?
Yes, she's his mistress.
Oh, Margie, his poor wife. Oh.
Oh, George. Honey. I can't wait until I see you next weekend. So, I'll meet you at the same hotel that we always go to? Love you, honey.
George? Who was that?
Oh, that was Phyllis. She's my mistress.
Your mistress? Your mistress? Now, I do want a divorce.
Now, wait a minute, Gracie. Just wait a minute and listen to me. Every 2 years, you get a new Cadillac. Get a divorce and no new Cadillac. Every year, you go to that fancy resort in Florida for 6 months. Get a divorce and no 6 months in Florida. Didn't I get that good-for-nothing brother of yours a job at the factory after he got out of prison? Well, get a divorce and I fire this no-good bum who steals from you and from me. Now think before you do something you might regret later.
You know, George, our mistress is so much prettier than Max's. Oh, George, Mama had such high hopes for my brother. You know, she wanted him to be a doctor.
Yeah, I know. He once told me that when he was just a kid, he liked to play doctor with all the little girls in the neighborhood. Now all he plays are the horses.
Oh, George, now be kind. My brother Sammy has a very analytical mind. He likes to figure the odds on things. Mama said that Sammy was very bright as a child. It wasn't his fault that he got mixed up with the wrong crowd. Even the warden said he was one of the smartest prisoners he's ever had under his care. The warden made him a chef.
That's true, Gracie. And when he got out of the pen, I turned Sammy into an accountant. He really knows how to cook the books.
George, don't be silly. Sammy doesn't cook books, he cooks food.
Yeah, he sure does know how to cook. I went over to his house the other day, and he had some funny stuff that he was selling for big bucks, cooking on the stove. I asked him what it was, and he just smiled, and he said something I didn't understand, something about crystal or something. Whatever it was, it sure smelled funny. Well, he told me to keep this little operation of his under my hat. I told him I wish I had some hair under my hat. He did tell me a story that he saw happen at Johnny's Bar and Grill.
Oh, what story, George?
Well, it seems your brother was at Johnny's, and he said some big, burly biker guy walks in, and he sees this little guy sitting at the bar just staring at his drink. So the biker grabs the drink from in front of the guy and gulps it down and sauces it back. He slams the glass down on the bar and he says, "Hey, Pipsqueak, what are you gonna do about that?"
Oh, that's a terrible thing to do. What a brute.
Now, please, Gracie, let me finish the story. Well, the little guy turns and stares at the biker and he says, "Mister, this has been the worst day of my life." And then he starts to cry, the little guy does. He says, "I went to work this morning and my boss tells me he has to downsize and I'm fired. Then I went home and I found my wife in bed with another man. My daughter tells me that she's pregnant and the guy doesn't want to marry her. I find out my son has a $150 a day heroin habit and the IRS has put a lien on my house. And the tow truck has pulled up and takes my car because I haven't paid a penny on the note in 7 months. Well, I was so miserable that I wanted to die. So I came in here and I ordered a whiskey and I poured cyanide in it. And I was just sitting here working up the courage to swallow it when you came in.
George, that is such a silly story. Who would ruin good whiskey by putting cyanide in it?
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
A message from Sue Johnson, Executive Director, Wake Up and Live's Actors Studio. Dear art supporters, there is no charge to be featured on Wake Up and Live with the Arts, which airs on YouTube, Cox Cable, and Cleveland Cable Access. However, as an artistic community service program, all we ask in return, Wake Up and Live would appreciate and accept any amount tax-deductible donations via MasterCard, Visa, cash, or checks. Donations may also be made via PayPal at www.wakeupandlives.org. Checks should be made out to Wake Up and Live's Actors Studio and mailed to 19333 Van Aken Boulevard, Shaker Heights, Ohio, 44122. Attention, Sue Johnson. If you would like to showcase your talent, special event, community organization, or arts-related business on Wake Up and Live with the Arts, contact Sue Johnson at wakeup4664@aol.com. Remember, donations help us keep the arts alive in Cleveland.